Now we move to the post-exilic period. So the temple is built, the city walls are built by Nehemiah, and they sorted things out, but things are not the same. They say something about this. They say that when the temple, the second temple of Zerubbabel was built, Ezekiel spoke about that temple. He said this is going to be a very glorious temple, huge temple, big temple, beautiful temple, glorious temple, etc. But when the temple of Zerubbabel was finished, the very old people that returned from the exile, that had been in Jerusalem when the temple was knocked down, those people who had a memory of the first temple, Temple of Solomon, when they looked at the finished temple of Zerubbabel, they cried. They wept. Why? It was nothing. They said, this is nothing. Where is this temple that Ezekiel had promised? So somebody today told me that someone of the kids somewhere in Europe converted to Judaism from Christian. It was a deacon, whatever. And I said, if he just understood that it's very desperate to look at promises that is not fulfilled in the Old Testament, it's really disappointing. It's almost like a scam. Unless Christ comes and does what he did, the rest of the promises are very difficult to swallow. So when God said to Abraham, I'll make you a blessing to all the tribes of the earth, where is that? Where is the children of Jacob as a blessing to all the earth? When he comes and says, David, you will have a child after you die, and he will be the heir of the kingdom, and his kingdom will have will be forever. Where is that? So those people in the exile, they would say, where is the kingdom of David that God promised that will be forever? It's not forever. What's happening? That's why many Jews today, they would say, we give up. We're done. We're not following that anymore. So this is the feeling of those people staying in the land after the exile. So let's move on to the next empire. Alexander the Macedonian, or they call him in history Alexander the Great, conquered the Persian Empire in 330 BC. He defeated the last Persian king who was very weak. But Alexander was a very civilized person. He didn't want to, kill the king, but he had two persons with him kill him before Alexander arrived. Alexander actually married his daughter. And he was more interested in civilizing people and educating them and bringing them to the Greek lifestyle, the Greek philosophy, the Greek law, the Greek everything. They call this movement, this word was coined by a German historian. They call it Hellenization. To Hellenize is to spread the Greek language, culture, population into the former Persian Empire after Alexander's conquest of Persian domain. After Alexander died, we said that he died in his 30s. Why did he died young? Some people say he was depressed because he conquered the world too early. He subdued many countries. He went all the way to India, and he found no place else to subdue, so he got depressed and died with depression. After Alexander, the empire was divided between his strongest generals. The main three empires which ruled the Near East were the Seleucids. I'm just going to talk about the Seleucids and the Ptolemies. Seleucids and Ptolemies. The family of the Seleucids, one of the generals, his name was Seleucus, ruled West Asia. So you're talking about Persia, even all the way to India, all that place, and all the way west to Palestine and the Arabian Peninsula. This is the area of the Seleucids. While the western part of the kingdom, which had the main city, Alexandria, especially Egypt, that's what we're talking about, it is the Ptolemies. Who is the last king or queen of the Ptolemies? Anybody knows? Cleopatra. And Cleopatra had a very interesting history. That's why she's famous. Very interesting history. She tried to be. We'll talk about her in a little bit. So the Seleucids in West Asia, including Palestine, that's the main part of the empire, the Greek empire that we want to talk about. The Seleucids followed an aggressive Hellenizing plan of Judea. They wanted people to be Greek. The most aggressive of the Seleucids were Antiochus IV. He called himself Antiochus Epiphanes, or Antiochus, the revelation of God. God is revealed in him. That's how he felt himself. The Jews on the other side called him Antiochus Epimanes, which means the crazy. Antiochus the crazy. Why? History is divided over that. We'll see what happened. So he was the most aggressive Hellenizing ruler of the Seleucids. He ruled from 175 BC until he died in 164 BC. Not much, 11 years. We're coming closer to the birth of Christ here. Careful now, we're coming very much into this time. Some Jews, mainly those of the urban upper class, notably what we call the Tobiite family, wished to dispense altogether with Jewish law and to adopt a Greek lifestyle. This is interesting. They said, we don't want anything from the Torah or Moses or the synagogues or any of it. We want to be Greeks. We are so much interested to be the civilized people. We want to be like them. According to some historians, the main motive for the Tobiites' Hellenism was economic and political. They didn't really care much for the religion. They wanted just to be as rich as they can. And to be rich, you have to deal with the Greeks because they were ones controlling the trade and everything. So they said, we're not going to benefit anything from keeping the law of Moses. Let's just side with the Greeks and be like them. We trade with them and we marry into them, and we will be rich and politically powerful. They built a gymnasium in Jerusalem, competed in international Greek games. Anybody saw the movie Ben-Hur? They had a racing arena in Jerusalem, and this was not by the Romans. It was actually before the Romans. It was in the time of the Greeks. They built a gymnasium in Jerusalem, competed in international Greek games, removed their marks of circumcision. How you do that? I don't know. I really don't know how you do reverse circumcision. It's very interesting. And repudiated the Holy Covenant. That's how it is written in Jewish history. When Antiochus IV Epiphanes became ruler of the Seleucid Empire in 175 BC, the high priest in Jerusalem was Onias III. Maybe he was one of the Tobiite family. To Antiochus, the high priest was merely a local governor within his realm. Why? Because there was no king. Guess who took over the leadership of the city and the kingdom? The high priest. The high priest took both the religious leadership and also the political leadership. So when the Greeks looked for someone to deal with the Jews, all the Jews listened to the high priest, so he would be the ruler power. You see this in Pilate when he talks to the high priest in the matter of executing Jesus. The high priest becomes the spokesperson for the kingdom. So Antiochus looked at the high priest as a local governor who could be appointed or dismissed at will. While to Orthodox Jews, he was divinely appointed. How can you think about the high priest like this? So this explains to you why in the time of Jesus there were two high priests. Think about it. This is the same thing as having two patriarchs at the same time. You know, the Catholic Church have done it. We don't know how, but in our tradition, you cannot have two popes at the same time, can you? For one pope to be appointed, it means that the pope before him had died. He had left us. So to them, he was just merely a political figure. He can be appointed or dismissed at will. This is the beginning of having two high priests living, or maybe three, or maybe five, okay? Assassinations, conspiracies, bribery, and division characterized that period. Antiochus pillaged the temple, attacked Jerusalem, and led captive the women and the children. From this point onward, Antiochus pursued a zealous Hellenizing policy. The history says we don't know why. Why all of a sudden he went crazy on them. They say most probably this is not characteristics of Greek rulers. Greek rulers were very, what's the word I want to use? Like Cyrus, understanding. They don't want any trouble in their domains, so they want to appease everybody. They let everybody do everything if they don't trouble the ruler. You can do whatever. They want to worship anything, they can worship anything. This is something that they have picked up through history. But why did he do that? Why in the middle of it, he turns against them and go crazy? Nobody knows. He made possession of the Torah capital offense and burned the copies he could find. Anyone who would have the Torah in their house or in the synagogue would be executed and the copy will be burned. According to First Maccabees, he banned many traditional Jewish religious practices. Jewish sacrifice was forbidden. Sabbaths and feasts were banned. Circumcision was outlawed. And mothers who circumcised their babies were killed along with their families. Altars to Greek gods were set up and animals prohibited to Jews were sacrificed, like pigs, dogs. They will made sacrifices on the altars. The idol of Olympian Zeus was placed on the altar of the temple. This is what Daniel had spoken about. The stories of Jewish martyrs were recorded in 2nd Maccabees. The Coptic Church celebrate their martyrdom, commemorating them in the Synaxarium. We have them. We have a day for, I think her name was Salome, and we have, I think, a priest who refused to eat pigs, to eat pork, and they were actually having the Torah in their homes. So there's this woman, it's a beautiful story actually, in the 2nd Maccabees. So with her 4 kids, the husband is killed already, and they are actually going to torture them one by one until they renegate all their Jewish identity. So the talk that mother gave to the governor, it's just heart-wrenching. She says to the child who's going to be executed in front of her, said, I don't know how you were formed in my womb. I'm going to give you to the same person who made you. I'm not worried. So they killed all of them, and at the end, they killed her. I think her name was Salome. It's in our Synaxarium. You'll find that story. It's from 2nd Maccabees. So those martyrs are considered by the church martyrs. The Hellenic influence pervaded everything, and even in the very strongholds of Judaism, it modified the organization of the state, the laws, public affairs, art, science, and industry, affecting even the ordinary things of life and the common associations of the people. The inscription forbidding strangers to advance beyond a certain point in the temple was in Greek for the first time. The temple, every language, they know every letter written in the temple is Hebrew. It had to be Hebrew. Although the people were not speaking Hebrew, Aramaic, since they came back from the exile, all the language was Aramaic, but the temple kept the Hebrew language as a sacred language. In the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, he changed it and forced them to write it in Greek. And was probably made necessary by the presence of numerous Jews from Greek-speaking countries at the time of the festivals. The coffers in the temple was contained, the shekel contributions were marked in Greek letters. It is therefore no wonder that there were synagogues of the Libertines, Cyrenians, Alexandrians, Sicilians, Asiatics in the holy city itself. That's unheard of before. That's why in the day of Pentecost, we hear those people are there in the city. This was during Antiochus Epiphanes' reign. Now, this is the condition during the time from the Babylonians. After the Babylonians were finished, the Persians came. Cyrus is the conqueror of the Babylonian Empire. He allowed the Jews to come back. The exile is ended. Now they are in the post-exilic time. And you have the last 3 prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, and the last of the last is Malachi. And that's it. Then they go into this very dark time of persecution with the Greeks